Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going to unpack some serious wisdom
Mm-hmm.
from Ram Charan's Know-How. You familiar with this
Oh,
one?
absolutely, yeah.
It's a great book.
It gets into those real skills, right? The ones that separate those leaders, the ones who consistently deliver.
Right, right.
We're talking the Jack Welches, the Robert Shapiros of the world,
Yes, yes.
and how they use these skills to tackle some seriously complex challenges.
Right.
By the end of this, you'll not only have a grasp of these essential skills, but um, you might even start to see them in action all around you,
Yeah.
maybe even in yourself.
I think what's so compelling about Charan's approach is that he takes leadership off that pedestal.
Mm,
You know, that you either have it or you don't kind of thing.
yeah.
He breaks it down into these concrete, learnable skills,
Right.
8 know-hows to be precise.
8 know-hows. Okay, I'm intrigued. What are we talking about here?
Same.
So he identifies positioning, detecting change, leading the social system, judging people, molding a team, setting goals, setting priorities, and dealing with forces beyond the market
Wow.
as the essential skills.
Okay.
And he really emphasizes how each one is crucial for navigating the ever-changing landscape of modern business.
Yeah.
The world is not getting any simpler.
No, no.
So these skills become, even more important.
All right. Well, let's dive into one of those.
Okay.
Out of that list, dealing with forces beyond the market really jumps out at me,
Mm-hmm.
especially these days when public opinion and social movements can make or break a company's reputation. It feels like that's a skill set that leaders can't afford to ignore.
Absolutely. And Charan uses the example of Robert Shapiro at Monsanto
Okay.
to illustrate just how important this know-how is. Shapiro had this grand vision of using genetic engineering to revolutionize the food industry,
Mm-hmm.
but he completely miscalculated the societal backlash against genetically modified foods.
Oh, yeah, the whole Frankenfoods debate. You're right. That was a PR nightmare. But how does that tie back to this specific know-how?
It comes down to recognizing and understanding the power of external forces.
Okay.
Think about Prince Charles, for instance, and his very public opposition to genetically modified foods.
Right.
This wasn't just some fringe idea. It tapped into a broader public anxiety that the media amplified, turning Frankenfoods into this label that Monsanto just couldn't shake.
So it's not just about reacting to these external pressures. It's
Yeah.
about anticipating them.
Exactly.
Like, what are the trends, the movements, the anxieties, even if they seem small right now, that could potentially snowball and impact your business down the line?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about awareness, it's about engagement.
Mm-hmm.
How can you constructively engage with these forces,
Like-
shape the narrative, and potentially find solutions that address legitimate concerns?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about reframing the conversation entirely.
Okay. That's dealing with forces beyond the market. What about setting goals in a turbulent world?
Mm-hmm.
It feels like every time you set a goal, the ground shifts beneath you.
Yeah.
How do you even begin to set solid goals when the world is constantly changing?
It's definitely a challenge. And Charon emphasizes the psychological aspect here.
Right.
It's about finding that sweet spot between being ambitious, which is crucial for growth and innovation,
Mm-hmm.
but also being grounded in reality.
Yeah.
Recognizing what's achievable given the resources you have, the market conditions, and any potential constraints.
Yeah. I can see how easy it would be to get caught up in the pressure to set those really bold, headline-grabbing goals.
Yeah. Yes.
Especially when you've got investors breathing down your neck or you're trying to, motivate your team.
Yeah.
It's tempting to reach for the stars, even if those stars are a little out of reach.
Yeah. And Charon offers a cautionary tale
Okay.
about exactly that. There was this CEO who got fixated on reaching a specific stock price. He tied his team's stock options to this ambitious target, and the company took on way too much risk trying to hit it.
Oh, I got a bad feeling about this.
Yeah, it didn't end well.
Okay.
The company suffered major financial losses trying to force growth that just wasn't realistic.
Yeah.
The CEO ended up leaving, and the stock price never even reached the goal he'd been so focused on.
So it's not that ambitious goals are bad. It's about making sure those goals are within the realm of possibility
Yeah.
and that they're aligned with what the company can actually control.
Mm-hmm.
It's about focusing on things like, improving operational efficiency, innovating your product line, those kinds of things,
Right.
rather than pinning your hopes on something as unpredictable as the stock market.
Precisely. It's about focusing on what you can directly influence and building from there.
Okay.
Now, let's say you've set those ambitious yet achievable goals. How do you actually make them happen?
Right.
How do you translate those big picture aspirations into day-to-day action?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
I feel like it's so easy to get bogged down in the everyday whirlwind,
Yeah.
putting out fires,
Yeah.
responding to emails. Those big goals end up getting pushed aside.
That's where the power of dominant priorities comes in.
Okay.
Charan is a huge advocate for laser focus.
Okay.
He argues that choosing just a few absolutely crucial priorities is the key to actually getting things done.
This is this is resonating with me so hard right now. I'm definitely someone who tries to do a million things at once,
Mm-hmm.
and I end up feeling uh, scattered and overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you determine those dominant priorities? How do you separate the truly important from the just urgent?
Right. Well, Charan contrasts the struggles of General Motors in the early 2000s
Okay.
with the success that Chrysler had under Dieter Zetsche.
Okay.
To illustrate this point, both companies were facing some serious challenges, but they took very different approaches.
Okay. Dieter Zetsche, the guy with the awesome mustache. Tell me more about how he tackled things at Chrysler.
So Zetsche was laser focused on a few specific things. First, he was all about developing the right products.
Oh, yeah.
He realized that Chrysler needed to offer cars and trucks that consumers actually wanted, so he completely overhauled their design and engineering processes.
So rather than trying to be everything to everyone, he honed in on what Chrysler could excel at and what the market was actually demanding.
Exactly. His second dominant priority was rebuilding Chrysler's team.
Okay.
The company was struggling with infighting and high turnover, and Zetsche knew he couldn't turn things around without a strong, cohesive team. He spent a lot of time carefully selecting people for leadership roles and fostering a more collaborative culture.
So focusing on the people, both in terms of talent and culture. That
Yeah.
makes sense. You can't really achieve anything if everyone's rowing in different directions.
Right. And his third priority was all about building strong relationships with Chrysler suppliers.
Okay.
Instead of making steady demands or constantly shifting priorities, which had been a problem in the past, he prioritized establishing close partnerships with key suppliers.
Oh.
This led to more consistent cost and productivity gains for Chrysler.
Wow. It's amazing how he managed to distill such a complex challenge down to just a few essential areas of focus. And it sounds like it paid off.
It did, at least initially. Chrysler started gaining market share and even turned a profit under Zetche's leadership.
Wow.
Of course, the company has faced its own set of challenges in recent years,
Right?
but the early success under Zetsche is a great example of how choosing the right priorities can be a game changer.
It's a powerful lesson for all of us, really. Whether we're leading a company, a team, or just trying to manage our own lives, identifying those few truly dominant priorities and putting our energy there is essential.
Right.
Okay. So we talked about setting goals, choosing priorities, and earlier we touched on that idea of dealing with forces beyond the market. Now, I'm thinking about a story. That really highlights how crucial that know-how can be.
Oh, I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
This is where things get really interesting. Let's talk about Ford Motor Company in the mid-2000s
Okay.
and how they ended up caught in a cultural crossfire between the LGBTQ plus community and the religious right.
All right, lay it on me. What happened?
So Ford decided to start advertising in gay-oriented publications.
Okay.
Specifically promoting their upscale brands like Jaguar and Land Rover. They also started offering same-sex partner benefits and incorporated diversity training on sexual orientation for their managers.
Wow, for the time, that was a pretty progressive stance to take.
It was, and they received a lot of positive feedback from the LGBTQ plus community, who saw it as a sign of inclusivity and hoped it would set a precedent for other major corporations. However, this approach didn't sit well with everyone.
Yeah, I can imagine that sparked some controversy.
Enter the American Family Association, or AFA.
Okay.
This Christian activist group had a significant following, and they were not happy with Ford's pro-LGBTQ plus stance. They accused Ford of promoting a homosexual lifestyle and undermining traditional family values.
Okay.
They even launched a boycott, urging their members to pressure Ford into changing its policies.
So Ford was facing pressure from Pretty powerful group. What did they do? Did they stick to their guns or try to appease the AFA?
Well, initially they agreed to meet with the AFA,
Okay.
which led to a temporary suspension of the boycott.
Okay.
Shortly after that meeting, Ford announced that Jaguar and Land Rover would stop advertising in gay publications.
Wow, so they made a concession. I'm guessing that didn't go over well with the LGBTQ plus community.
You're right. There was a lot of criticism from gay organizations and activists who accused Ford of caving to the AFA's demands. They felt that Ford had made a commitment to inclusivity and that backing down sent a negative message.
Right.
It seemed like Ford was stuck between a rock and a hard place.
It sounds like they were trying to appease both sides, but ended up alienating both in the process.
Exactly. And to make things even more complicated, they then faced pressure from a powerful shareholder, Alan Hevesi,
Okay.
the controller of New York State. He was a vocal advocate for LGBTQ plus rights, and he questioned Ford's decision from a purely business perspective.
Okay.
He pointed out that the LGBTQ plus community represented a significant market share and that alienating them could hurt Ford's bottom line.
So now they've got pressure from all sides. How did Ford respond?
They attempted to find a middle ground.
Okay.
While Jaguar and Land Rover stayed out of gay media, Ford decided to run corporate ads in those publications, promoting their entire line of vehicles.
Okay.
However, the AFA saw this as a violation of their earlier agreement and reinstated the boycott.
Wow, it's incredible how this situation illustrates the complexities of navigating these competing societal pressures. There's no easy answer, and even the most well-intentioned actions can be met with fierce opposition.
This brings us back to the importance of that eighth know-how dealing with forces beyond the market. It's not simply about crisis management, it's about deeply understanding the landscape, anticipating potential points of conflict, and building relationships with various stakeholders. It's about proactively engaging to shape the narrative and find workable solutions.
Yeah. It sounds like that know-how is less about having all the answers and more about having the awareness and the strategic thinking to navigate these really complex situations.
Exactly. Now, let's shift gears a little bit and delve into another crucial aspect of leadership.
Great.
Resource allocation.
All right, resource allocation. I'm ready to dive in. What's Charan's take on that?
So it's not simply about having resources. It's about using those resources strategically to align with your dominant priorities and maximize your impact.
That makes sense. It's like putting your money where your mouth is, right? If you're serious about your goals, you need to back them up with the necessary resources.
Absolutely. And Charan highlights this brilliantly with the example of Thomson Corporation, a company that's really mastered the art of strategic resource allocation.
Okay, I'm always fascinated by companies that find innovative ways to manage their resources effectively. Tell me more about what Thomson Corporation does.
They use a 4-box grid to categorize their business segments.
A 4-box grid. Interesting. How does that work?
So imagine a grid with 4 quadrants.
Okay.
The vertical axis represents revenue growth, and the horizontal axis represents free cash flow margin. So the top right quadrant would be those segments that have high growth and high profitability.
Ah, the stars of the portfolio.
Right.
I bet they get a lot of attention.
Of course. But it's not just about showering the stars with resources. Thomson Corporation takes it a step further. They analyze the capital spending within each segment, breaking it down into maintenance investments, growth investments, and efficiency investments.
So they have a really granular understanding of where every dollar is going and what it's intended to achieve. It's not just about the what of the spending, but the why.
Exactly. This level of analysis allows them to make informed decisions about where to allocate resources to maximize their impact. It's a data-driven approach, not just intuition.
I love that. It takes the emotion out of those tough decisions.
Right.
So how do they use this grid to actually make allocation decisions?
It helps them identify which segments are truly deserving of additional resources.
Okay.
Maybe there's a segment with high growth potential that needs more investment to really take off. On the flip side, it might reveal segments that are underperforming.
Right.
Or no longer align with the company's overall strategy. Those might be candidates for restructuring or even divestment.
That makes sense. Sometimes, to support the rising stars, you need to make tough choices about where to pull back resources.
Right. And that's where the psychological aspect of leadership comes into play again. It takes courage to make those difficult decisions, especially when they might involve conflict or job losses.
Yeah, it's about having that long-term vision and making the choices that while maybe difficult in the short term, will ultimately benefit the entire organization.
Right. Now let's move on to another one of Charan's know-hows. The power of total immersion.
Total immersion. Okay, that sounds intense.
Yeah.
What does he mean by that?
Think about it this way. It's about getting your entire team truly aligned.
Okay.
Not just on the what of the goals, but also the why behind those goals and the how of the strategy.
Right.
It's about making sure everyone understands the reasoning behind key decisions and feels a sense of collective ownership.
I can see how powerful that would be. It's like creating a shared understanding, a unified vision, instead of everyone operating in their own silos.
Yeah.
But how do you actually achieve total immersion, especially in a large organization?
Right. Well, Charan uses a fantastic example of how one company accomplished this. John Van Scoter, who was the head of Texas Instruments' DLP division, completely revolutionized their budgeting process.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me about this budgeting revolution.
So their traditional budgeting process was a nightmare.
Okay.
It could drag on for 6 to 8 weeks with constant back and forth negotiations between different departments, levels of management.
Yeah.
It was incredibly time-consuming, inefficient, and just created more silos.
Ugh, I know that feeling. Budget season can be brutal. So how did Van Scoter change things?
He condensed the entire budgeting process into a 3-day total immersion experience.
Wow.
He brought together 70 key leaders from across the division,
Okay.
representing all the different functions and areas of expertise.
Wow, that's a bold move.
Yeah.
Getting all those people in the same room for 3 straight days must have been a logistical challenge in itself.
It was, but Van Scoter understood that the benefits would far outweigh the challenges by bringing everyone together for this intensive 3-day session.
Yeah.
He forced people to step out of their silos, engage in open and honest dialogue, and really understand the division's big picture goals, the priorities, and the reasoning behind resource allocation decisions.
Sounds like a crash course in strategic thinking for the entire leadership team.
Exactly. And they used shared spreadsheets and databases. So everyone could see the detailed financial forecasts, the underlying assumptions, and the trade-offs involved in every decision.
Yeah.
Complete transparency.
I love that. It removes the mystery and builds trust. When people feel like they're part of the process, they're more likely to be invested in the outcomes.
Exactly. And what was really amazing about this process is that it sparked all kinds of unexpected collaborations.
Okay.
For instance, one product group realized that they were developing algorithms that could be directly applied to another group's projects.
Okay.
And it saved them a ton of time and resources.
See, break down those silos and all kinds of magic can happen. This is making me think about another great example of a leader who embraced change and brought her team along with her.
Okay.
Let's talk about Maria Luisa Ferrer-Rangel.
Oh, I love her story. She was the CEO of a family-owned publishing company in Puerto Rico, and she found herself facing a challenge that's all too familiar in the media industry.
You're talking about the rise of the internet and the decline of traditional print media.
Exactly. But instead of just watching the world change around her, she decided to take action. She set 2 big, audacious goals: diversify into multimedia properties and expand beyond Puerto Rico, where her newspapers were primarily based. She knew she couldn't do it alone, though. She needed to bring her team along with her.
So how did she approach that? How do you get people on board when you're talking about such fundamental shifts?
Well, she started by gathering her vice presidents, general managers, and newspaper editors for a brainstorming session. She laid it all out on the table: the financial realities, the challenges posed by the internet, and those 2 major goals she'd set.
So a top-down approach, but with a collaborative element. She wasn't dictating, she was inviting them into the conversation.
Exactly. And she asked them a powerful question: what do we need to do together to achieve these goals? She encouraged them to be creative, to think big, and to identify both the opportunities and the potential roadblocks.
It's about empowerment, right?
Yep.
Giving people a voice, making them feel like they're part of shaping the future of the company.
Absolutely. And from those brainstorming sessions, some key priorities started to emerge. One of the most important was to grow their existing web operations, which had been running separately from the daily newspapers.
Interesting. So instead of seeing the internet as just a threat, they recognized its potential to expand their reach and connect with new audiences.
Right. But they knew that to make this happen, they needed to transform their newsrooms. They needed to embrace multimedia, integrate their print and digital operations, and create a more collaborative, forward-thinking culture.
Yeah, that's a massive undertaking. Changing the mindset and the infrastructure of an entire organization is no small feat.
It was definitely a challenge. Ferré Rangel encountered resistance, especially from those who were used to doing things the traditional way, but she understood that to survive, to thrive in this new landscape, change was essential.
It's that courage to lead through change, even when it's uncomfortable, that really sets apart those effective leaders.
And she didn't just push forward blindly. She recognized the need to bring in new talent, people with experience outside the traditional media industry. She started recruiting from areas like telecom and finance.
Smart move. Bringing in those outside perspectives can really shake things up and lead to new ways of thinking.
It did. Those new hires brought fresh energy and a willingness to challenge the status quo. And Ferré-Range made sure to emphasize teamwork, making sure these new recruits integrated well with the existing staff.
It's a great example of how even companies with a long history and maybe a somewhat ingrained culture can adapt and embrace new ways of working. It makes me think about the importance of...
Hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break and come back with even more insights from Ram Charan's know-how. Stay tuned.
We're back, and I'm still thinking about Maria Luisa Ferré-Rangel's story. It's a powerful example of how leaders can navigate disruption and bring their teams along for the ride.
It is, and it really underscores something Charan emphasizes throughout the book. Clear and consistent communication.
Right.
Ferré-Range recognized that it wasn't enough to just set those big goals. She had to constantly communicate those goals, the reasoning behind them, and make sure everyone understood the why behind the what.
That's such a crucial point. When everyone's on the same page, rowing in the same direction, it creates that sense of shared purpose and momentum.
Exactly.
Speaking of momentum, I'm ready to dive back into those 8 know-hows.
Okay.
What's next on our list?
Let's talk about judging people.
Okay.
This one is absolutely critical for building and leading high-performing teams.
Okay, judging people. I've got to admit that sounds a little harsh.
Yeah.
But I get it. As a leader, you need to be able to assess talent, identify potential, make sure you've got the right people in the right roles.
It's not about being judgmental. It's about having a keen understanding of human nature.
Okay.
Chan talks about the importance of being able to quickly and accurately assess someone's character, their strengths, their weaknesses, how they might fit into the overall team dynamic.
So it's not just about skills and experience on paper. It's about those less tangible qualities.
Right.
Their work ethic, their ability to collaborate, their resilience, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And it's not just about initial assessments. It's about ongoing observation. How do people respond to challenges? How do they interact with their colleagues? Are they committed to continuous learning and development?
This reminds me of something I struggle with. Sometimes I'm too quick to form an opinion about someone based on, a first impression or a single interaction. How do you avoid those snap judgments and really get to know someone's true potential?
Charan suggests paying attention to what he calls tells.
Countess.
Subtle cues in someone's behavior that reveal their true character.
Okay.
It could be the way they handle pressure, how they respond to feedback, or even their body language in meetings. It's about looking beyond the surface, really tuning into those subtle signals.
That's fascinating. It's like becoming a human lie detector. So how do you develop that ability to pick up on those tells? It sounds like it takes a lot of experience and observation.
It does. And Charan stresses the importance of seeking out mentors who are skilled in this area. He suggests finding someone who has a track record of building successful teams, asking them to share their insights, their frameworks for evaluating talent, and even their stories of misjudgments they've made along the way.
Right. It's about learning from those who have already walked the path.
Exactly.
I love that idea. Okay, so let's say you've got a team in place. How do you move from judging individuals to actually molding them into a high-performing unit?
That brings us to another know-how, molding a team.
Okay.
Chan argues that a truly great leader doesn't just assemble a collection of talented individuals. They create a cohesive team that's greater than the sum of its parts.
I've definitely seen the difference between a group of people working together and a true team. But how do you actually create that sense of unity? What are the key ingredients?
Charan talks about the importance of shared values, a clear sense of purpose, and a culture of trust and mutual respect. It's about creating an environment where people feel safe to take risks, to share ideas, and to challenge each other constructively.
It's about fostering that, psychological safety
Right.
where people feel comfortable being themselves, speaking their minds without fear of judgment or retribution.
Exactly.
I think that's so crucial for creativity and innovation.
It is. And Charan emphasizes the importance of, clear roles and responsibilities.
Right.
Everyone needs to understand what's expected of them, how their work contributes to the overall goals, where they fit into the team dynamic.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's about eliminating ambiguity
Mm.
and making sure everyone feels like they're playing a valuable role.
Right. And it's not just about structure and clarity, it's also about fostering a sense of camaraderie and connection.
Mm-hmm.
Charan talks about the importance of celebrating wins together,
Yeah.
learning from mistakes as a team,
Yeah.
even just taking time to connect on a personal level.
Yeah, it's about building those relationships, right?
Yeah.
Creating a sense of community where people genuinely care about each other, want to see each other succeed.
Exactly.
I think that makes work more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
And it creates a much more supportive and productive environment.
Absolutely. Now let's shift our focus to another critical know-how, setting priorities.
Okay.
This is a skill that's crucial not just for leaders, but for anyone who wants to be more effective and achieve their goals.
I am all about setting priorities. I am a
Yes.
big list maker,
Okay.
but I have to admit, I sometimes struggle with actually sticking to those priorities.
Yeah.
There's always something urgent that pops up,
Mm-hmm.
and those important but not necessarily urgent tasks end up getting pushed to the bottom of the pile.
It's a common struggle. Charan offers some really practical advice for overcoming that. He talks about the importance of time blocking,
Okay.
actually scheduling dedicated time on your calendar for those high priority tasks, just like you would schedule a meeting.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's about treating those important tasks with the same level of commitment and urgency that we often give to those fire drills that pop up throughout the day.
Exactly. And he suggests setting aside a specific time each day, maybe first thing in the morning or last thing before you leave,
All right.
to review your priorities and make adjustments as needed.
So it's not just about setting those priorities once and forgetting about them.
Right.
It's about constantly revisiting them, making sure they're still aligned with your goals, adapting as circumstances change.
Right. And Charan emphasizes the importance of learning to say no. This is a skill that many of us struggle with, especially those of us who are people pleasers
Yeah.
or who have a hard time setting boundaries.
Oh, I'm definitely guilty of that.
Yeah.
Saying no feels so uncomfortable, like I'm letting people down.
Yeah.
But I can see how it's crucial for protecting your time and energy and making sure you're focusing on what truly matters.
Charan offers a great tip for saying no gracefully.
Yeah.
He suggests saying something like, I really appreciate you thinking of me for this, but given my current priorities, I'm not able to take that on right now.
That's a great phrase. It's polite, it's respectful,
Mm-hmm.
and it clearly communicates your boundaries without making it personal.
Exactly. And sometimes saying no can actually open up opportunities for delegation.
Mm-hmm.
You might realize that someone else on your team is perfectly capable of handling that task, and it frees up your time to focus on those things that only you can do.
Delegation is another one of those skills that,
Yeah.
I'm working on.
Yeah.
It's hard to let go of control, but I'm learning that it's essential for building a strong team and avoiding burnout.
Absolutely. And that's a perfect segue into another know-how, leading the social system.
Okay.
Charan talks about how great leaders understand that they're not just leading individuals, they're leading a complex social system.
What does he mean by social system?
He's talking about the intricate web of relationships, power dynamics, cultural norms, informal networks
Yeah.
that exist within any organization.
Yeah. It's like the invisible fabric that holds everything together, right? Those unspoken rules and relationships that influence how work gets done.
Exactly. And Charan emphasizes the importance of understanding and navigating this social system.
Okay.
It's about recognizing who the key influencers are, understanding the unwritten rules of the game, being able to build alliances and coalitions to get things done.
So it's not just about having the right skills or the right strategy. It's about having the social intelligence to navigate the complexities of the organization.
Precisely. Charan suggests paying attention to things like communication patterns, decision-making processes, even the physical layout of the workplace.
Those are interesting details to pay attention to. How do you actually use those observations to lead more effectively?
So let's say you're trying to implement a new initiative that requires buy-in from multiple departments.
Okay.
By understanding the social system, you can identify who the key stakeholders are, who has the most influence,
Right.
and what their motivations might be. Then you can tailor your approach to effectively communicate the value of your initiative and build support.
It's about understanding the human element of the organization.
Yeah.
It makes me think about how important emotional intelligence is for effective leadership.
Absolutely. Charan talks about the importance of empathy, self-awareness, and the ability to regulate your own emotions. Great leaders are able to connect with people on an emotional level, build trust, and create a positive and supportive work environment.
Yeah. It's making me realize that leadership is less about, giving orders and more about building relationships, understanding motivations, and creating a shared sense of purpose.
Now let's talk about another know-how that's closely related to leadership: detecting change.
Okay.
In today's fast-paced world, being able to anticipate and adapt to change is essential for survival.
Change is the only constant, right?
Right.
But how do you actually detect change? It's not like there's a change radar that goes off when something's about to shift.
It's about being constantly vigilant. Charan talks about the importance of paying attention to subtle signals in the market, within your industry, and even within your own organization. It could be shifts in consumer behavior, emerging technologies,
Right.
new competitors, or even subtle changes in the way people are interacting within your team.
So it's about being aware of your surroundings, tuning into those weak signals that often get ignored or dismissed. It's
Yeah.
like having your finger on the pulse of what's happening.
Exactly. And it's not just about passively observing. It's about actively seeking out information.
Okay.
Charan suggests talking to customers, attending industry events, reading widely,
Yeah.
even having conversations with people outside your usual circle.
It's about cultivating that, intellectual curiosity, right? Being open to new ideas, different perspectives.
And once you've detected those signals of change, it's crucial to be able to interpret them. What do they mean?
Right.
How will they impact your business? What opportunities or threats do they present?
This is where that strategic thinking comes in, right? It's not just about seeing the change, it's about understanding its implications, figuring out how to respond effectively.
And Charan emphasizes the importance of being proactive, not reactive. Don't wait for the change to overwhelm you. Anticipate it and take action to adapt, innovate, and stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, it's about embracing change as an opportunity for growth and transformation rather than fearing it or resisting it. 'Cause we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about setting goals, choosing priorities, leading through change, building high-performing teams. It's making me realize just how complex leadership really is.
It is, and there's one more crucial know-how we need to explore before we wrap things up. But first, let's take a quick break.
We're back, and I'm feeling pretty energized after that discussion about detecting change. It's a great reminder that the world is constantly evolving and that leaders need to be adaptable and forward-thinking.
Absolutely, and that brings us to our final know-how from Ram Charan's book, Positioning. This one might seem straightforward at first glance, but it's actually quite nuanced and incredibly important.
Okay, positioning. I'm imagining a company trying to figure out its place in the market, its target audience, its unique selling proposition. Am I on the right track?
You're definitely in the right ballpark. Charan defines positioning as the ability to, to clearly define where your business fits within the competitive landscape and to articulate that position in a way that resonates with your target customers and stakeholders.
So it's not just about having a great product or service, it's about communicating the value of that product or service in a way that cuts through the noise and connects with the right people.
Exactly, and it's not a one-time exercise. Charan emphasizes that positioning is an ongoing process that requires constant monitoring and adjustment. The market is always in flux. Consumer preferences evolve, new competitors emerge. Effective leaders are constantly evaluating their position, making tweaks, and ensuring they're staying relevant.
It makes me think about those companies that were once market leaders but failed to adapt to changing times. They clung to their old positioning even when the world around them was shifting, and they ended up falling behind.
It's a cautionary tale. Charan provides the example of Kodak, a company that was, synonymous with photography for decades. They were slow to embrace digital photography, clinging to their dominance in film, and they ultimately paid the price.
It's a reminder that no company, no matter how successful, is immune to disruption. So how do you approach positioning strategically? Where do you even begin?
Charan recommends starting with a deep understanding of your core competencies.
Okay.
What are you truly good at? What sets you apart from your competitors? What unique value do you bring to the table?
It's about identifying your strengths, those things that you do better than anyone else. And then I imagine it's about aligning those strengths with market opportunities.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot, where your expertise intersects with what customers are actually looking for. Charon talks about the importance of conducting thorough market research, understanding consumer trends, and identifying unmet needs.
It's about connecting the dots between what you do well and what the market is demanding. It's about finding that niche where you can truly excel.
And once you've identified that niche, it's about crafting a clear and compelling message that resonates with your target audience. This is where marketing and branding come into play. How do you communicate your value proposition in a way that's memorable, that differentiates you from the competition, and that motivates people to choose you over everyone else?
It's about telling your story in a way that connects with people emotionally, that speaks to their needs and aspirations.
And it's not just about external messaging. Charan emphasizes that positioning needs to be aligned internally as well. Everyone within the organization, from the CEO to the frontline employees, needs to understand the company's positioning and how their work contributes to it.
Yeah, it's about creating that shared understanding and a sense of purpose. When everyone's aligned around a common goal, it creates a much more cohesive and powerful force.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Ram Charan's know-how. We've explored 8 essential skills that are crucial for effective leadership in today's complex and ever-changing world.
It's been an incredible journey. I'm walking away with a new appreciation for the depth and the nuance of leadership. It's not just about charisma or, giving orders. It's about cultivating a specific set of skills, a way of thinking, a way of being in the world.
And it's important to remember that these know-hows aren't just for CEOs or those in formal positions of authority. They're valuable for anyone who wants to make a positive impact, whether you're leading a team, a project, or even just your own life.
So to our listeners, here's a final thought to ponder. We've talked about positioning from a business perspective. But what about your own personal positioning? What are your unique strengths and talents? What do you want to be known for? How are you communicating your value to the world? These are questions worth reflecting on, no matter where you are in your journey.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep leading.